I'm Allison. Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From 187 with Gina. Um, this is my t-shirt. It's a cat, the Love Cats. I got it when I went to Asheville, North Carolina. There's a store there that has shirts and hats and things with this on it, and I just thought it was adorable, and so I got it. And again, I'm excited. Hey!
Hey.
Yeah, you just keep trying. And eventually, oh, and here's what I'm reading, which I didn't do this time around. Group by Christy Tate.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah, I figured you'd probably read it.
I did an event with her a while
Did you?
back.
Yes. I'm also reading BFF. I
Oh, fun.
was reading back to back Christy Tate. So um, her therapist is a little unconventional. That's all I will say.
I cannot say I would want to be in the.
I was like, oh, you're having something. Is your mic or it's loud? It's noisy. Something's going on.
Um, is that better
That's
or
better. I think it's better.
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You are looking very deserty. Oh, shoot. Okay.
Right in the
Yeah.
desert, yes.
Yes. No, your hair is different from when I saw you. Okay. So, Sonia, you can hear this. Does anything sound weird to you, or is it just what I'm hearing? That's weird. Sonia. She's here. And so I'm asking her if it's just my headphones are freaking out, which is very possible because I have problems sometimes. Um, okay. Sonia, just let me know if it sounds bad. So, yes, I thought her therapist. I don't know if you've ever known anybody, Gina, who's done like Est or the Forum or LifeSpring or any of those things. But it made me think it is weird. So is it me that's weird? Oh God, I'm so annoyed. She's saying that it sounds weird.
Huh.
And I
Is it you?
let me try again. Yeah, it is like something scratching the mic. I agree. But nothing is scratching the mic. Annoying. Okay.
I even turned
Try it without it.
my fan off.
Let's see if that makes a difference.
Situation.
Is that better? I'm sure everyone's really enjoying this. Okay, so did it remind you of that, Gina? That kind of like,
I mean, yeah, in certain ways. But it was not quite like anything
yeah,
I'd ever heard of, actually.
yeah. I was just like, okay. I mean, I found it really like readable and interesting, and I was
Yeah,
wanting
totally.
to know what happened, but it did not make me want to be a patient of his. So that was my only. I was like,
I,
oh,
I must
yeah,
concur with you. But it made a really interesting book.
it did. It did. I mean, it was so readable, and I, I've been to many a 12-step meeting, so it's I not that this is about 12-step, but there is the overlap. So anyway, um,
Maybe something has to be something you wouldn't want to do in life in order to make an interesting book.
I mean, it certainly makes it readable, right? If you're like, oh, I don't want to, I'm not ever going to do that. So but I mean, I'm very open about, I do this once a week. I want to hear about what people experience and where they're from. And I am endlessly fascinated by people and their stories. So, um, speaking of stories, so Gina, what do you think of the prompt?
I loved the prompt, but I'm really disobedient. I mean, I'm not a poet, and I thought, oh well, it's basically a Mad Lib. It'll be fun.
Right, right.
And instead, it turned into like a 1,000-word essay. So I mean, I just yeah, you could see why I was always in trouble at school and why every book down from like 450 pages to like a normal length. So
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I'm totally an under. When I give things to people, I'm like, tell me what's missing because I don't know what it is. I wonder if it goes way back to feeling like I was talking too much. I don't know, but uh
I'm still talking too much.
good for you. I enjoyed it immensely. I'm glad you broke all the rules. I don't care about the rules. They're mostly there to make people get over the hump of feeling they're not poets, right?
Right, right.
Like to say, okay, me neither. And Georgella would say, what does that even mean? What is that word? We're all poets. So would you like to say anything else before you read your piece?
No, I guess not. Yeah, I think everyone has been adequately prepared that I run. Whole thing.
Hmm?
I should read the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, I'd love you to read the
Right.
whole thing.
Here
I
we
want to
go.
hear the whole thing. I'm so everyone get a comfortable seat.
Get comfortable. You're in for 1,000 words here. Um, I'm from basil leaves simmering in chicken cacciatore, from Stella D'oro cookies dunked in taster's choice, from thinly sliced and salted eggplant stacked on paper towels while sand drained from an hourglass like the days of our lives. I am from rice medley boiled in airtight bags, from frozen Salisbury steaks and guilty mounds of Peterson's ice cream by low TV light, from blowjobs taste like crackers and milk, and 12-year-old girls nodding in real or feigned understanding. I'm from the closet under the stairs, from cubby holes lined with foam glass, from if I can't have you, I don't want nobody, baby, morning till night until Tommy and Jenny divorced and moved out. I am from musical beds as my father slept sentry on the living room couch, a stack of locks on the front door, warding off imaginary intruders intent on stealing our nothing. From the back bedroom where my mother spent days with cold compresses on her migraines and nights alone in a half-cold bed. I am from front rooms and use guys. And Alice, do Protestants believe in God? I am from my father's promise that tree roots would invade our sewage systems, from ripped up green bud bushes and fresh concrete yards smoothed dry and hosed down until they glistened like a bone, our block switching off Technicolor to gray, the Wizard of Oz in reverse. I'm from charades on Christmas Eve and uncles dead by murder, a ruptured esophagus, 13 heart attacks, and murder again. From faith healers and shepherds in basement brewed gin, from traveling salesmen and hobos, from factory workers, sober bartenders, secretaries, and sorters of mail to Oslo. I am from Virgin Mary visitations heralding the death of another son, from death knocks 3 times and leaves no footprints in the snow. I'm from my mother's footsteps, echoing through hospital corridors after she signed the papers to amputate her father's leg, the same leg he used to wedge her into locked closets, to part her knees in the bushes when he shoved his hand down on dates after my nana's before it was fashionable divorce. I'm from my mother's bottomless hunger born of welfare apples riddled with worms and free milk delivered to her classroom to put some meat on her bones. I am from the ways mothers try to keep their children safe and accidentally open trapdoors to other dangers. I'm from trapdoors to unfinished basements, from clubhouses in the mildewy dank below the stairs. I'm from Dixie cups of powdery country time lemonade, from cutting the streetlights so the neighborhood ladies in their house dresses stop shelling lupini beans and scream for their kids, Michael, Maria, to hurry inside before the gang fight. I am from honorary street signs bearing the names of the under 18 dead, from shots catapulting through male bodies to kill 15-year-old girlfriends and unborn children, from fireworks that boom all summer and ears honed to differentiate gunfire, from open fire hydrants as car washes and the Italian flag painted onto the pavement for the 4th of July, from a hole blown through the wall of the chicken factory to feed hundreds at the block party's communal grill, from a Jesus who would have multiplied fish and loaves by the miracle of their falling off a truck. I'm from life-size crucifixes with bright red blood, from blood is thicker than water, from if you kids don't quiet down, you're all going to hell. I am from the Mayflower, Calabria, Chicago, and the small village of Race Street, from my mother's DAR stint, only to find she blended no better than in our Italian neighborhood, from below a poverty line we didn't know existed, from talking about the white people on TV without knowing we were them and they were us. I am from a black boy riding his bike from Hubbard Street beaten with bricks until the ladies on the front porch said he became a vegetable. From gang rapes and coat hanger weapons and girl bodies hurled down flights of stairs. From old women who used to be girls providing alibis. From he should have known better than to come north of Grand Avenue. And she was a slut. She had it coming. I am from grandfathers dead before my birth and grandmothers who lived upstairs alone, one after the other, 20-year widows. From whispers about my father's nervous breakdown, from my mother being known as the hillbilly because if you aren't Italian or Puerto Rican or Jewish or black, what else could you possibly be? I'm from children's screams too loud to be stifled by painted closed windows, being a family matter, and my father's resignation when my cousin was shot the second time and died. He never had a chance. I'm from lying on my back in the playground after the streetlights went on, staring at pollution stars with Melissa Manchester's Don't Cry Out Loud blasting on my cousin's boombox, from swallowing that song into my body until it became a mantra, from tears that turned to ink, then Times New Roman font. I am from She Thinks She's Too Good, from the betrayal of leaving, from taking tears and ink with me, from standing so many years later with my children in a museum where lyrics from a musical I wrote my way out, shown in neon, from yes, God, yes, from if you learn to cry aloud, you might not learn to stop. I am from shooting like the stars I tried to catch across the sky, bright and doomed and headed for anywhere else but here. I am from entire families stricken dead with early cancer. From was it something in the water or was it our lifestyles? From survivor's guilt the moment I boarded a Van Gelder bus. Does it make the story neater if I do not include being from my sharp chin bone on my mother's shoulder while we snuggled in the white chair, her feeding me pictures of cherries in a counting book, or the way she bought rolls of brown butcher block paper when I was 10 because it was cheaper and my ink devoured paper like her mouth had once devoured apples dewormed? Does the story make more sense if I am not also from dancing on my father's shoes, being tossed into the air by his once strong arms, from nightly trick or fight games and whispering into his whisker close ear, do you want to hear a cigarette? Am I less from everything else if I am also from a father cleaning up my vomit and remarking to my mother, it's gold, or a mother singing in the front seat of our blue Chevy on excursions to Cherry Valley for apple pie, or Lake Forest because my father was knocked out by the heavy, dark wood ceiling beams at the Deer Path Inn, where my parents wandered the lobby in reverence, me in boredom, then left quickly because we couldn't afford to stay and eat. But I am from seeing my eyes reflected in the car window in the dark and mistaking them for gods watching over our unit of three, from falling asleep on 100 drives home to their voices that called me Little Face and Little Flower, my two-sided soundtrack of safety and home. I'm from the public library that saved my life, as perhaps one saved yours, forged by Stan Getz and Kenny Rankin albums, chamomile tea, Norman Lear laugh tracks, and Van Johnson Red Sox. And no one could have blamed me if I stayed in that cocooned from forever. But I was Arundhati Roy's not that kind of animal, and nothing could hold me, even my father's tears when he said to my mother with wistful hope, maybe she'll fail out. So I am from driving by the two flat in which my father was born, in which I was raised, my 5-year-old quipping a quarter century later, this place looks like zombies attacked it. I am from the zombie apocalypse of You Can't Go Home Again, and there is no fact checking for nostalgia. I am from the beautiful violence of love. Really fun to write.
You could tell. That's what I could feel reading it and then hearing you read it. Like I was trying to make mental notes. First of all, don't cry out loud. So did that help you not cry? Because literally, whenever I heard the song, I would cry.
No,
Like,
it literally, it was like an instruction manual.
oh man, it had the opposite effect of me. I was like, good note, can't do it. Can't do it.
Had
And
a
thought about putting the song on this like thing, like I did Bee Gees because that was more what I could
right.
deal with. I was like, I can't put it on there in case it has any effect on Gina like it has me.
No, when I was very little, and my parents were quite nice, as you heard, and very tolerant of me, and I was a bit of what my neighborhood deemed a crybaby when I was really young. And so it was my mission in life by the time I was about 9 or 10 to cut that out. And as a result, I cut it out for about the next 12 years.
That's what happens when you cut it out. Hard to turn it back on. I mean, at least from watching other people. because I couldn't. I'm a crier and a laugher, but I also, just as a tangent, I looked it up on YouTube. There is the wildest video of her singing it with some circus thing happening because she sings about clowns,
Yes.
and so it's happening,
Like circus.
and I was just like, man, the '70s are wild. That's all I'm gonna say. And if you want to watch it, you might enjoy it. I who want to steal our nothing. That got me when I read when you said it. It's just so I don't know. It just makes me think of so many things, like how this country operates, like how we're all just so scarce and scared all the time. Like no matter what we have, no matter if it's nothing or everything, just how it feels.
There had been a rash of burglaries in the neighborhood, which does strike me as preposterous. It was a bit before my birth. And my father became very paranoid and basically slept in the living room for the remainder of my life.
Yes.
And layered all these locks on the door, as you heard, and so it was, you know, it was normal, I thought at the time, for this to be happening. But there are stories about where this goes back to. So, kind of a quote unquote then called nervous
Yeah.
breakdown that he had after the death of one of his brothers, and it was all sort of connected. But that was the one thing he was never able to let go of. In fact, even when he later moved downstairs from me in my house in Chicago, he still, like, if he didn't actually hear that lock click when you came in, he had to go out even with his cane, with his walker, and lock the door after you. It would be an endless back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we had no conversations about, you know, triggers or things. Like, I mean, nobody talked about that stuff. It was just like, oh, this is how they are.
Right.
And it's just how they are. And the trap, mothers wanting to protect you and trap doors. I just thought that was so, I mean, spot on. Like, I think my mom tried, I tried. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't
No,
expect,
you can't.
you can't anticipate everything. You can't protect your children from everything. And the passage about your mother's father and his leg, I thought, like, uh, I mean, if you believe in karma, I guess.
I never knew him.
Yeah, he was.
I don't believe in karma because I think there'd be a lot of people
I don't believe in it either. I used
in
to.
the landscape, perhaps,
Yeah, I
where it
used.
would look different if karma were a thing. But that being said, yeah, my mom, that was the last time she ever saw her father. So
Yeah. Um, but just all of it, Gina. And I mean, I having read your memoir, and so of course some of it is familiar to me. Blow Your House Down, which I'm a huge fan of. I I just what a journey life from where you're from to where you are now, and I love at the end when you talk about it make it easier if it was just one.
right, right, because it's never just one thing. I mean, I guess if you're lucky, it's never just one thing. And I was lucky. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if it's just one thing, it's probably just terrible.
right, exactly. I mean, no one gets out on, but we had this sort of unit of three inside the little apartment, and it was everything. I mean, it wasn't everything, of course, but it in the long run, I think made more of an impact on me than everything else.
And that's what they say, right? I mean, experts, if you have a loving home, it's a life changer. Like
Right,
everything else is negotiable. If you
right.
have a loving home, uh, you're probably gonna at least get to the point where you're gonna have hope and keep going. And I
Exactly.
also felt like you writing about maybe she'll fail. Like I feel like later in my life I've come to have a awareness about what that's like when you grow up and you change your social station, you change your educational status from your parents, and that is an act of separation, whether you're that way or not.
Right, right. I mean, my mother had always aspired to go to college, but she wasn't able. And so she really wanted me to go, and we were very close, almost symbiotically close. But she wanted that for me. She wanted me to, go onward and find other kinds of lives. But my father didn't have a lot of experience with that at that time, and so for him, it just felt like devastation. How could I want to leave the place he had literally been born and lived his entire life, and were I mean, at one point I had something like 60 cousins in a 4 block radius. I mean, it was that wasn't the case anymore by the time I left for college. But you know, yeah, I left.
Yeah, and how that's very different from me going away to college. I mean, it wasn't that it was just even though I'm from a family of five and only two of us went to college, it was not a given, but it still was,
Right.
like probably maybe my not like the city. I don't. It's a different thing, and also all of your memories of Chicago. It's just like that was definitely discourse at that
Yes.
time, and I think it's funny or sad,
I'm old. So yes, totally.
but like that is how certain types of Republicans talk about cities now, but
Mm.
it's not actually what's happening in cities now, but then it was.
Yes. Yes, back then. Yes. I mean, I can't really claim to know exactly what an equivalent
Mm,
of my previous neighborhood, because in part, I mean, Chicago is such a city of neighborhoods, and it still is, but gentrification has
oh,
changed so
sure.
much. I mean, my old neighborhood still has some of the same families that have always been there. But it also, like in 1980 or 81, the first yuppie moved in, and he built a house. It was this really modern house. People kept spray painting it. He would just paint right over it. And he took to jogging around the playground. I lived across the street from the playground
Hmm.
of the elementary school, and people did not know what he was doing. Everybody would come out onto their porches to like watch the yuppie run around the building. And so, I mean, we in a way were like a small town elsewhere. Like we were not necessarily integrated into what was happening in popular culture as sort of, obviously yuppies, they jog. We didn't know these things. So, and I don't think that there are places like that anymore in American cities, because we have the internet, and
Yeah.
we have 9 gazillion channels, and you can't be quite as in your own small town
Mm.
within a city the way that people used to be able to be.
I even remember that when because I went to Northwestern and I remember meeting a girl who was from Tinley Park and like I didn't know what that meant. Like I don't know what any of this means. Like I just moved here, but people who are from Chicago had a lot of they knew all of the intricacies. Rainy Green doesn't even exist anymore.
Oh
You know,
no, no, it's been gone for a while.
yeah, but it's just like to think about which was I mean, it was a big place and it
Big,
had
it was a
a
big
real presence.
in Chicago.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Byrne moved in. Mayor Jane Byrne moved in. It was quite the media sensation. It was ridiculous. But yes, so that's been gone. I don't even remember how long now.
it's been a long time. I remember when it happened. I was like, oh, because of course, I'd accidentally driven in there a few times because that's what happens when you're driving around. You don't have GPS.
Sure, of course.
You oh, I had to turn around.
It was, I mean, and Chicago is still, I mean, we are still, oh, I say we, I mean, I live there still part-time, when I'm not in the desert, but it was it's still a very racially segregated city. So compared to places like New York, but back then it was even more so. Like you could literally live in Chicago and not even know there were a lot of people in Chicago who weren't like the people in your neighborhood.
Mm.
Hence my my mom's inexplicability to a lot of people in
Yeah, that
our
was
neighborhood. So,
hillbilly was what they chose,
well,
which is
I mean, not everyone, but yes, it was a few people, and because there was no conception of Protestants or WASPs. I mean, that was not really a thing in our neighborhood.
yeah.
So, there was no frame of reference for her other than, I guess, like people on TV.
Yeah. I mean, my mom grew up in Milwaukee and she talks about that, like, I mean, it was very about like where people were from. That was how people were categorized. I think it's difficult for a lot of people to imagine that now because it's just white. But back then it was not
Oh,
like that.
ethnicity. Well, I mean, that's one of the great propaganda successful propaganda campaigns of like vile white supremacy is to somehow group all Caucasian people under one umbrella and like get them united against everybody else, you know, which does necessitate a certain amount of also flatlining of your actual origin, your actual ethnicity, your traditions, etc., in favor of this, like joining the mainstream or whatever, joining the dominant group. And it's it's really it's actually it's very sad for I think
I
everyone. I would often when I would teach things like comp, I would have students write things about their background and traditions and their ethnicity, their rituals, and invariably I would have like white kids who were like, I don't have any ethnicity, so that's just it's brainwashing.
well, and it's interesting too. I don't remember which activist it was. They were just talking about cultural appropriation with white people, and it was like, get engaged with your own culture instead of trying to, co-opt Black culture, Indigenous culture, Asian culture, whatever one you're interested in. Figure out where you came from and what your culture, and I do enjoy hearing about people's different traditions and what
Yep.
stuck with them all these years later. Like we do, fascinating to me what we carry with us and what we remember. And so you shared so much, and I loved it, and I'm so glad you didn't follow the rules. So I'm glad you had a good.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a blast, and yeah, I'm gonna make my husband do one.
Yeah,
So
and if he wants to join me, Rob is more than welcome to join me. So
awesome.
there's just not as many men.
Oh, what a shocker! There are not as many men writing like
Yeah,
autobiographical poems.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what a shocker! So, well, I guess they went from all doing that to then, now the author is dead, the subject is dead because we exhausted it for many generations. So it's not, now it's lesser for a lesser form of literature.
Oh,
That don't get
is
me.
isn't it unbelievable? You're like, does nobody see that the reason everyone thinks this isn't important is because women are writing it? And it's like,
Right, and it was important for
yes,
generations when men were writing it. I mean,
yes,
so like the idea of domestic fiction, like I mean, not to pick on any particular writers, but I mean, Jonathan Franzen and Jeffrey Eugenides write domestic fiction. Like, what does that term even mean? So, I mean, there's so many issues with how we categorize things in the literary world that, you know, it's like instead of just celebrating that there is more diversity now,
mhm.
we've found further channels to marginalize people.
Yeah. And I also just want to say when they say the stuff like, oh, we don't need any more books by women, I think, who do you think are reading most of the books, by the way? And I mean, I almost exclusively read books by women because I spent the first, I don't know, 20 years of my life almost exclusively reading books by men. So I, I have to, of course, I'm happy to, you know,
Well, the
bounce.
thing is, I mean, I read books by men and women. I do probably read more women writers than I do male writers, but I mean, but I read books by everybody. But statistically speaking, men often won't read books by women or anybody who isn't a cis man. And so, that's where I think that comes from. It's like, oh, if we want male readers, we have to have like not only books by men, but these sort of hyper masculine books, and it's just sort of like um, why, why? In 2025 are, so many white men still fundamentally disinterested in the experiences and like common humanity of anybody who isn't exactly like themselves. So I don't think that's a problem with, there being more voices in literature. I think that's a problem with what a particular segment of the population deems valuable or interesting.
Yes. Which we can see writ large, obviously, in the world we're living in right now. Yeah. And I'm always gratified, even though it doesn't tell me anything I don't know, but I am validated when I see reading, builds compassion and understanding and empathy, because that has certainly been not only true with other people, but with myself. Like, I have more compassion for myself reading people's stories because I see myself mirrored there, and I treat them with generosity and kindness. And I realize, oh, I should also do that with myself.
It's everything. I mean, I talk in my teaching, and you've heard me, like literature breaks us out of our isolated bubbles of shame.
Yep.
Writing relatable literature as opposed to like aspirational literature where, the character or the author is some sort of sage or guru that we're supposed to admire. That can be useful from maybe a self-help perspective, but it's alienating from a humanity perspective. And we want people who are relatable because they're giving voice to our secret shames and making us feel less alone, which is really, probably the most valuable thing that literature does.
I was going to say, just to keep it real basic, it's the best. The best. When I have that feeling when I'm reading, I don't know, it's just like, it gives me hope and keeps me going. And I just like, community is so important to me in my life. And you feel that when you read. You feel community even with people you're never going to meet.
Totally. The living and the dead. It's a intergenerational, international conversation that never ends.
Yes. So thank you for contributing to this conversation, Gina. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Thank you. And
okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.